and welcome, virtually anyway, to Glastonbury. This is the first of what we very much hope will be a series of visits aided by those who live in interesting places, and Glastonbury has proved to be that, where we will, through walking around, investigate, enjoy, and discover. And our guide tonight is Matt Witt. So let's say a very good evening to Matt. Here he is. Good evening, Matt.
Good evening, Tom.
Thank you for doing all of the work. It makes that job wonderful because you not only know your subject amazingly well, but you've done all the camera work and an awful lot of the commentary. So you have, as a resident with Glastonbury, like Brighton Rock, right the way through you, we have really come to understand and discover, as I hope all those who are watching this evening will be able to.
Sure, it's my pleasure, always, and I don't doubt the amount of work that's gone in at your end as well. So thanks for that.
Let me immediately say that we have a comments button up on the right-hand side, and anything that you would like to ask that intrigues you, or comments or corrections or whatever you want to put, we would love to hear from you. So the way that we're doing this is by combining Matt's various talents. He's an author, he's a folk artist, he is a poet, he is a naturalist. And we've discovered, working with him, just how well all this lot can combine together. Matt, which of those, or maybe it's all of them together, how does that lot fuse together for you? Because it's an amazing array of skills.
The place where it fuses together is in nature. That's the bedrock, that's the starting point, and the rest of it splays out from there. It wasn't always like that, but that's how it seems to have developed. Since I've been living in Glastonbury, I've been able to spend a lot of time out in nature, and it's transformed my creative output. So it's filtered through me, and it produces artwork. In that way, there's a collaborative relationship. So yes, any of those specifically, I guess I started at from a visual arts perspective. So I'm an illustrator and web designer as well. So I've got a foot in that world. Words, music, and poetry are I think the core focus creatively, and then with the natural things feeding it from beneath.
Well, I've had the advantage of seeing this material already. Others haven't. So I think if we could, we'd start straight away with a song of yours and where you perform it and what we see around you. I won't spoil it for viewers by giving the game away, but let's have a look at that first song and where you are and what you're doing.
To you I will write till I'm double, with age and a face for the grave. For you I would die on the double, for you are from where I came. And we'll sing like we sang in the olden days, a song that bends and sways, like the fire for to burn all your troubles, and a light to light the way. first light. Meet me over there.
Absolutely lovely. Thank you very much. You host walks, tree walks.
I do.
Would you like to tell us a little about what that means and how it all works?
Yes, sure. So one of my favorite things to do is to go out into nature and explore it, and take my guitar with me, and to play, and be inspired by nature. And I decided to start to invite people along, and
these would have been friends of yours to start with.
People started to come. No, not necessarily. Members of the community, first of all. Small group. The first group was 5 people, and then the group started to grow. And then, I started to advertise it a bit more. And because Glastonbury is a tourist town, it's a hub, so it attracts Europeans, people from all over the world. The group numbers started to grow, and it started to gain in popularity. And it's just people respond really well to it. I go out and lead them around the countryside, or rather the trees guide the way around the countryside. We stop and I speak about the trees and teach some tree identification, and then play some guitar, and also encourage the group members to express their creativity too. So maybe to recite some poetry or something.
That's and I've not actually come across that. I think it's a lovely mix, but I've not come across that.
No, well, there are some similar things going on, and there's a lot of forest bathing and things like that going on as well. But it's not so geared towards, the focus is the creativity, the tree identification, the practical side of it as well. But also the fact that it's in Glastonbury, it just lends it a mystical air as well. And there's so much thick, Glastonbury is thick with myth and history it makes the subject more dense, even more so.
Well, I've been reading up about it, and we're going to talk about it later on, but I'm absolutely fascinated. I had no idea. The only thing I knew Glastonbury for was the festival, and there's so much more. So we've got King Arthur and Jesus.
It's true that a lot of people only know Glastonbury for the festival, and then past that, a lot of people only know Glastonbury for its kooky high street and its independent shops, and then there's few extra layers below that as well.
Yeah, we should look forward to getting into that. Can we maybe go back to the lime tree that you were singing in front of there? Perhaps we've got a little bit of video that both shows the nature of these walks and what somebody might expect if they were on one, but it also takes us back round to that wonderful lime tree, which has got a great history and a real interest about it. Let's have a look at the video first.
Great.
So this gives you a view of Grandmother Lime from a distance. She's perched upon bushy coombe. This is an area just above the town. So in the centre of the picture there you can see St John's Church. So that's the high street of Glastonbury. We can see a hill behind Grandmother Lime, which is Windmill Hill. And Glastonbury is comprised of 4 main hills. Right over here, or to the east, is Glastonbury Tor, behind the pines over there. You can just see it peeking out. Behind me, so we're heading more to the south and southwest now, is Chalice Hill. This is the hill that we're on. Behind Chalice Hill, further down towards the southwest, is Wiggly Hill, which is the fourth. So 4 hills of Glastonbury: Windmill Hill, Chalice Hill, Wiggly Hill, and then the Tor, obviously. And it's beautiful up here. I love coming up here. It's a piece of owned land that's owned by local community to save it from development, and it's home to some wonderful beings. And this lime tree is one of those.
So tell us, you called it grandmother lime, so you've got to give us a bit more than that.
Yeah, so the tree is known as grandmother lime. It's a term of endearment that she's been given by the local community. Lots of people visit her. Lots of people visit her to make offerings, to ask her questions. She's a very old tree. She apparently has a great deal of wisdom to share as well. So there's just, a real depth of relationship between the tree and members of the community.
Any idea how old she is?
It's difficult. I want to say around 200. It's difficult. I haven't measured her. I should go and do that.
And is she married? Has she got is there a grandfather?
That's a good question. She had a partner to her as you look at her to her left, which I only recently heard was lost like 20 years ago. Oh. So she had a partner that was apparently just as big, and this, so I hear, fell in the wind. She's got she's on an embankment, and her trunk is of such a girth. It may be enhanced by the fact that she's on a bank to sturdy her. She's got really large flutes at the bottom of the trunk, and she splays up in this beautiful way. So there is a tradition of with the lime. There's a tradition in Europe. Limes seem to have this a similar importance throughout European traditions as like oak did. It's a strong central arbor around which communities gathered, and it's said that court was held under the lime, and justice may have been also carried out beneath the lime. There's a strong link to, there's a feminine quality and a link to fertility, and a tradition of asking for blessings in partnership, and things like in marriage and things like that.
And would that have something to do with the gifts that you were talking about and what's left there?
Sure. I mean, some of these gifts would be dedicated to the lime and left there with no other thought than that. In other cases, there may be wishes, and things that people would like to achieve in their life, or these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And so you can find ribbons on her and little handmade treasures around the base sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm. Rupert wants to know how you sex a tree. How do you know that it's a he or a she?
You don't. That is applied not in a sex way. It's in an archetypal, masculine, feminine way. So, but lime, for your information, produces hermaphrodite flowers. So perfect flowers with both male and female parts in them.
And I think lime, you correct me if I'm wrong, you are the expert. I know nothing about trees, but one thing I think I might know is that they're called lots of different things in lots of different parts of the world.
Yes, to some extent, yeah, they are a tree of many names. When we have European visitors here, and I introduce the tree to them, and they, and I'm talking about a lime tree, they don't know what I'm talking about. But as soon as I say linden, then this is a word that's quite recognizable to them, and lime has derived from that. In America, it's basswood. It's got the Latin name tilia, and I'm sure it's called a lot of other things as well throughout the globe. There are many different subspecies of lime. Many different species of lime.
And again, would I be right in saying that in Europe, perhaps the lime has a similar reputation to our oak tree?
Yeah, well, that's what I've read. Yes. Yes, I have read that they have them in the middle of villages. You know, they're that tree in the middle of the village, and that seems like a similar thing here with oak trees, although it's not always exclusively oak or lime. But yeah, they've got such a strong presence. Those trees, they're in their structure. And
well, I can imagine that when the very fortunate ones that have spotted that you do these tree walks ends up listening to you playing your guitar in front of Grandmother Lime, they must have been very, very impressed. I should think I would be.
Well, it's always a pleasure we often go to Grandmother Lime and sit there and play songs, and you can actually climb up into her as well. And I once climbed into the tree and played the song, and the audience sat around the bottom, so it was like Grandmother Lime was singing the song. That was quite fun.
I think that I can imagine that could be very, very impactful. Let's test you and get the benefit of your detailed knowledge. We've got some ways of identifying lime that you might like to comment on. Yeah.
I think we get the leaf first. Yeah. So when we did the filming, we had no leaves, but we have one here from stock photography. The leaves on the lime are just coming out now. And they're these heart-shaped, cordate, heart-shaped with petiole. They have serrated edges, as you can see, and then a little point on the end. They can often be asymmetrical. So one side, you can see, I think the top side there is slightly smaller, or vice versa. One side is smaller than the other. They have, there's 3 different types of lime in the UK native. There's small leaf lime, large leaf lime, common lime, which is a hybrid of the other 2. And there's a distinguishing factor in the leaf. On the common lime, you have very tiny hairs in the leaf veins in the corners, little clusters of hairs, and they appear to be white on common lime. Small leaf lime appear more rusty red or brown underneath. But this is very subtle. There, you have to look really closely to find that.
We've then got some buds, I think.
And so when the trees don't have leaves, we look at the buds. This is a bud that is just slightly breaking open. The buds on a lime tree are bulbous, protruding and red. You can also see the slight new growth there. These new growth twigs are red as well. So when you stand back from the tree in the sunlight, it can really have this red glow about it, even when it's got no leaves. And they appear alternately on the twig. Yeah. And so that's another one that's just coming out, just emerging. I was up there yesterday, and it's speckled with green. It's so beautiful at the moment. And then the bark of the lime. So bark on lime as a younger tree is smoother, with some texture. This is one of the arms of of Grandmother Lime, and this is a bit older. As she grows older, the bark becomes more textured and furrowed and ridged. You can like the rest of us. Well, that's it. Like humans, there's we have so much in common. Yeah, furrowed and little crisscrosses as well. Sometimes crisscross netted patterning on lime trees.
And I wonder what else we've got. There we are. Well, that gave you an idea of the character of the walks and the places that on your walks, Matt, people are going to end up, and it gives a walk in the country just a whole different meaning, I think. We've talked about poetry, and you have, I think, in Glastonbury a community. Is that too strong a description of poets that you that share your interest in nature?
Yes, I think community, it might not want to be formalized in that kind of a way, but there are many poets. Glastonbury has a unique population, a unique population. It's varied, lots of creative people here of all sorts, but especially poets. And many of the people that I meet on my walks around the lane later pop up and share poems about their walks. And there seems to be a little group of people who do that regularly in Glastonbury, and I try to highlight them. They inspire me.
Then can I ask you to introduce a couple of them for us, because we've got some of their work that we're going to play. Yeah,
great. So I think the first poet that we've got is John Bernard Egan. There's a video of me reciting his poetry with Grandmother Lime. I think there's 2 poems from John. John's a guy in his 70s. And he's looking after his wife at the moment, so he gets out for 1 or 2 walks a day around the lanes, and I often bump into him, and he's always really interesting to talk to. And he just churns out the poems. It's daily on, pretty much daily on Facebook. Poems about nature from the heart. Really inspired.
And then I think we've got 3 haikus, haven't we?
Yes, from Rosemary Smith, 3 haikus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
3 haikus dedicated to Avalon.
Yeah. Avalon, we should say, because it was the Isle of Avalon.
Yes, that's the myth. Yes, it's linked to the Arthurian legends, and yes, it's
we have all of that. So, we have all of that to look forward to. Let's hear the poetry.
A natural prayer. Between blackbird's dawn and the dusk song of a thrush, earth is graced with light unbound. Between oak's mantle and the reaching branch of ash, earth is blessed with green and crowned. Between well springs rise and the rivers run to sea, earth is sanctified, profound. Between the first breath and all the air intaken, earth is pure and holy ground. Robin splashes in cool waters of Chalice Well, iron red his breast. Moon climbs up the tor, ivory light tumbles down into the gleaming green. Grandmother Lime holds feathers, ribbons, tufts of wool, creaky songs of love.
Lovely. Right, we've got some walking to do and some trees to go and see. I think we better get on.
All right.
At least I hope we're getting on. Yes, we are getting on. So that's a view which would be north, I think, towards Wales.
Westerly towards Wales. In that direction, you can see Wales on a sunny day. From
30 miles away, amazing place. And this is we are into the sort of walks. I'll let you carry on.
Okay.
Oh dear, we seem to have got.
Are we stopping?
We've got a bit of freezing going on. Never mind.
So yes, there are monster blackthorns in Glastonbury. Blackthorns I love when they get really old. They grow these huge arms that reach out, and then they have crests of blossom, obviously in later winter and early spring. This one just as I was filming had just finished its blossom. You got some hawthorn also hanging over there. So that would have been at the entrance to Fairy Lane. Halfway down Fairy Lane is this beautiful ash tree. Ash is one of my favourite species of tree. This one particular has this pendulous, weeping quality to it, or tumbling ash, as I like to call them. There's a few of those around in Glastonbury. Not sure about that one. This particular ash tree grew with a split trunk, so it's grown with two trunks, and down at the bottom there's a little altar, and you sometimes see little things left in there. You can notice that the ash tree doesn't have any leaves at the moment, and still most ash trees don't have leaves. You can see the black buds there, the diamond-shaped black buds of that ash tree. And so no leaves, and still no leaves. Ash is the shortest leafing tree, actually. It leaves not until May, and then when it gets to autumn, it's like, I'm just going to pop my leaves off. It barely changes colour. If they don't drop green, then they're slightly yellow, unless it's an ash from another country, from America, because they go bright colour. But yeah, the Fraxinus excelsior, our ash, is my favourite tree species, I think, because probably we have so many of them around Glastonbury. We have some maiden ash trees, ones that haven't been coppiced or pollarded. Ash tree fascinates me on many levels. It's linked to the world tree, so there's a whole conversation to be had about that. It's also its flowers are very interesting as well. They're these splays of firework. You might be able to kind of see them in this image here. Splays of firework displays. There, that's the split ash trunk. But the flowers are. So in tree reproduction, if I just do this bit quickly, so tree reproduction, you have monoecious tree, which has male and female flowers on the same tree. Dioecious, excuse my Latin, a male tree and a female tree, and they need each other to pollinate. Ash can do both of those, but it can also produce hermaphrodite flowers as well. So flowers with both male and female parts. It also seems to be able to change from year to year. So yeah, fascinating for those reasons as well.
Is this the tree where there's a connection? If your child was ill, you'd cut the tree. Yes. Have I got the right tree?
Yes, that's some folklore. They would split a young ash trunk, and if a sick child, they would run through the hole, repair the trunk, and as the trunk repaired, it would fix, it would heal the child as well. This is the fifth read in my explorations.
Fascinating. Okay, then I think we ought to talk a little bit now about a little bit more about Glastonbury, about the mysticism of it all, about the tour, and we've got some photographs of, there we are, where maybe if you would, Matt, you could just introduce us. This would be part of your walk, and here you are with those who you're educating and who are enjoying it, and what would you tell them about this?
Sure, great. Okay, so this is the view from the tour. Really nice viewpoint that does feature on a lot of the tree walks. This is the tour. The hill is the tour, and then we have St Michael's Tower on the top. Used to be a larger church, and this is what remains, and part of the tower has been rebuilt. The tour, you can see the gentle slope on the right. That's the main path that leads up the tour, and then there's also an access around the back. Down the side of the hill on the left there, you can see some terracing, so there's been some interference there. The tour itself is orientated on southwest to northeast axis, so it's on the St Michael's ley line, the ley line that runs from St Michael's Mount in the south, in Cornwall, through Glastonbury. Well, actually, first, before it gets to Glastonbury, it goes to Burrow Mump, and Burrow Mump is like a mini tour, and that also has a ruined St Michael's Church on the top. You can see the tour from Burrow Mump. You can't quite see it the other way around. So that ley line then goes on across the country and meets Avebury, and then it meets a string of St Michael's towers as well. It links high points, and it could have been a point of navigation, of pilgrimage. There's also the energy lines that run along there, ley lines as it were, St Michael and Mary line that wiggle all the way along that ley line.
And it finishes, I didn't realise this, about 15 miles away from where I'm sitting on the North Norfolk coast.
Exactly. So we're linked in that way.
It is extraordinary. And it's the St Michael's ley line, and it's St Michael this and St Michael that all the way through.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And it highlights...
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, well, it's the pilgrimage. Glastonbury is still a place of pilgrimage for Christians, but for people of other traditions as well. It's an attractor. This high point. I mean, it's a spectacle today. To imagine that over the centuries, what a spectacle it would have been. What I'm always amazed by is the change of perspective, and this picture shows it really well. The change of perspective you get in such a short climb. You can be up that hill in 10 minutes or quicker if you leg it. But and from down there, you're kind of nestled in the combes and looking up at this grand tower. Then 10 minutes, you're up there and you can see horizon all the way around, panoramic for miles and miles, because it's surrounded by the Somerset levels. So it's a kind of nipple that sits out on the Somerset levels, and there's a few other dotted around. And it's said that this whole area was marshland, or it was marshland, and it's been drained. So it's got rines all the way across it. The change in, I think it's that contrast of landscapes that you get in Glastonbury that has real impact.
Well, wasn't it said that Joseph of Arimathea was supposed to have rowed across the Somerset levels to plant his staff in, which was then called the Sea of Avalon or the Lake of Avalon or whatever.
Sure. So he would have, he would by boat on Wirral Hill. He would have planted his staff, and that would have turned into the Glastonbury thorn. So there's a type of thorn called the Glastonbury thorn, or the Holy Thorn, and it stood on Wirral Hill, or a child of it stood on Wirral Hill until recently. It started to die and rot, and then it perished, and then it got taken away. But I think they're going to. The story is that Joseph of Arimathea planted his staff, and it grew into that, and then. There's a funny thing as well that a sprig of the hawthorn gets sent to the Queen at Christmas.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, and there's Glastonbury thorns dotted all around Glastonbury. You could do a tour of Glastonbury visiting the thorns. That would be an interesting tree walk.
And then, of course, we've got and did those feet in ancient times, because Jesus was supposed to have come to Glastonbury.
So I hear
Jerusalem.
I mean, these are wonderful myths. I love speaking them, and I love reading about them and hearing them from other people as well. Not to spoil the party, but there is a long history of
you're about to
of monks making up stories like this to encourage pilgrimage when the church is struggling for money, to encourage donation and interest in the church. So that these stories may have kind of derived from that. Similar with King Arthur, but that doesn't take away from them for me. That they add a lot to our heritage and how we do things. Absolutely. Here.
And wasn't Joseph also potentially responsible for bringing the Holy Grail across? Ancient religious relic?
Yes, this is another part, and so this image here towards the sloped side, so right down the hill is the Chalice Well, which is obviously named after that myth. There's a red and a white spring down there, and they emerge from underground, and the red spring is said to have iron in it. It has a really metallic taste to it, and then the water from the other spring is more of a calcium based water. I'm not sure of the technicalities of that, but yes, there's a well down the bottom that's linked to the chalice story as well, and it's said that the chalice is buried on around the Tor somewhere. There are so many stories about things living in the tor, things buried in the tor. You know, it's the entrance to the underworld, and things like this. And there's Gwyn ap Neath and tales like that of the fairy king, and that's his kingdom.
Well, you can see what the motivation for so many people who've come to Glastonbury is, can't you? It's a bit alternative and rather lovely new age, and I'm very envious.
Yeah,
right.
well, yes, and with the strong connection to nature as well, because with the new age thing, especially on the high street, you can it's beautiful and everything. It's lots of crystal shops and things like that. There's an extra depth to it than that, and then the nature and the trees and the beings that live out there. Yeah, it's the real attractor. Yeah.
Before we go to some more poetry, we have people who sang from the last readings of poetry, that beautiful imagery in the poetry, lovely haiku, there's and so on, and comments on Facebook. Is there a link to St Michael's Mount in Cornwall? Was one of the questions.
Yes, that's where it starts, or that's where it hits land. At least that's the start of it on land. Yeah, that's the start of the St Michael's ley line as a navigational point. Yeah,
I think we'll have some more poetry.
Great.
Just been applauded for what we had before.
Yeah.
Within the quiet company of trees. Within the quiet company of trees I rest as the day fades away. Within the slow motion of arboreal growth I let my mind take its ease, no need for haste. If there be cause to shout or run, I shall find it another day. If there be suffering in this world, and who can doubt it, I will address it from the throne of contentment. I shall first baste myself in peace, in stillness, in silence. The bed from which arises, like water from a spring, kindness, awareness, patience, and humility. I sit in the centre of a tree, its branches and leaves above me, its roots beneath me, its trunk at my back. And slowly I learn to know its reality and its materiality, its spirituality, its individuality, its universality, the intimacy and wholeness of its being and mine. Thus do we become companions in life. We share so much despite our differences. So should you catch me embracing the gnarled trunk of a mighty oak, or stroking the smooth grey bark of a beech, or gently fingering a scarlet maple leaf in autumn, do not mock. I am communing with my leafy friends. Within the quiet company of trees, I rest and let words drift away. Yeah, I love the sentiment of that. I walk among trees as if I was in a church that grew from the earth. Here I witness truth that unfolds upon a path winding through the wood. Here I bide at peace with the mentors of my soul who speak for the land. Here I am content to be in the sacred groves with dryads as guides. Here is the blessing of nature's sanctuary that holds spirit safe. Here is wilderness at the heart of creation, full of joy and grace. Here I rest easy with remarkable beings who teach stillness best.
Isn't that lovely? Teaching stillness best.
Isn't it just? So that one's the second one we heard. There was another one from John Bernard Egan, who was also the first poet that we heard, and then the longer piece that we heard there, In the Quiet Company of Trees, is by Steve Layton. And I first met Steve on an icy morning under not so positive circumstances, but he slipped on the ice, and that started our relationship. And after that, we said hello to each other, and slowly he kind of revealed to me that he was a writer, and then he popped up and said, "Oh, I got a book." And then we went on a tree walk, me and him and his partner Johanna, last weekend, and we went for lunch afterwards as well at their place, and he shared another book with me of short stories. So he just like slowly emerged over, but the sentiment of his writing, he writes a lot about bliss and meditation, and he's got this, both of those mention stillness. Both of those pieces kind of mention stillness that you find in nature. I love the way that these two people relate to nature with words, and translate something out for people to, process.
It's the tranquility of it, isn't it? It seems to me that's what resonates with me. That here you've got these wonderful alive beings, as you've taught me to see them, that are simply there in your life every day in the same place, gently moving on.
Yes,
very gently moving on.
Yes, and I love seeing them as friends. That you visit, and I think that enhances your relationship to nature. And naming trees is something that Steve does, and that I do as well. So we connected over that. So the Wiggly Oak, which we'll meet in a minute, I think.
Yes.
Grandmother Lime already had a name, but there's a number of other trees that I've named, the Guardian Beech and the Grail Ash. And I like, it makes them easy to refer to, but also maybe I talk about this in a minute anyway on the video. Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure. We'll find out.
We'll find out. And if not, I'll say it then.
Just a couple of comments. Very atmospheric with trees. Love the bird chorus. Beautiful voice. What's your advice for someone wanting to relocate to Glastonbury from the US? I guess come here as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of people want to move to Glastonbury.
Yeah, I can see why. Louise, the answer to your question, and the question was, where does the St Michael's Ley line end up in North Norfolk? At Hopton, which is literally just around the corner. And there were a couple, and much in the same vein. Let's say that.
Okay.
So we saw a bit of the oak. Now let's go back and have another look at it.
Yeah. So
there we are. And that's now for you. You're going to.
I'm going to narrate that now. Yeah,
you
sure.
are indeed.
Okie dokie. This is the Wiggly Oak. This is one of my favourite trees I like to go and sit beneath. It has a wonderful view of the Tor to the right. And the Wiggly Oak is a pollarded oak. So you can see the main trunk at the bottom is short, and then it splays off into many leader trunks. Two of the leader trunks you can see in the centre of the picture have left the main trunk and then fused together again at the top. This has been caused by them constantly rubbing together. Eventually the bark rubs off and they fuse, and it's produced this shape, which is significant in some traditions. Some people like to call it a portal. I wonder what would happen if you climbed through there. But she's got this lovely like bonsai quality, and her branches move out horizontally. She's got no trees around her, so she's been able to spread out her crown that way. And when you stand underneath and look up, you can see some complete spirals, complete loops in the branches. And it gives the tree this kind of like give in the wind. It's to give it a bit more tensile strength, I think it's called. She's beautiful. He, Wiggly Oak. Yeah, and that's a term of endearment as well. It's kind of a childish name. I like to name trees, so there we are.
Seems very appropriate name to me.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, some people have different names like the Trippy Oak and the Portal Oak and things like that. But I like Wiggly Oak, and that seems to be sticking. Like people are picking it up. But Steve, we started talking about naming trees, and he mentioned a walk that's a bit further out from the tour, and there's a specific tree that sits at the bottom of the field, and it's a perfect oak with a lovely crown. And he mentioned that he always sits there, and it's a very welcoming tree, and he always feels welcome and rested when he's there. So he calls it the welcome oak. Mm-hmm. And then he's got various other trees that he knows by name as well, and some of them have human names, for him. Mine are a bit more mystical and fairy tale like, I guess. There's a massive beech tree that seems to be the guardian of the town and the countryside. There's a gateway, and she's the guardian beech, and there's an oak growing by her side, and this partnership is significant. I'm
becoming completely absorbed into the Glastonbury culture that has you wonderful creative people, but the mysticism, the history, going back to Glastonbury itself, going back to the Stone Age, and to me the whole lot comes together and speaks with a single voice that produces the music and the poetry and the literature and the contemplation and the reflection.
That's lovely to hear. Yeah.
Well, and that's how this comes through to me. I is a very sort of very reflective and very pastoral
yes,
sense of well-being that comes with talking to you and listening to this.
Right, that's lovely. It's Glastonbury is a place of retreat. It's a bubble outside of reality almost.
And what a privilege to be able to walk around it. I know we haven't been into the town itself, but I think it's more important that the nature around it, along with the history of it, can get connected. And through walking around, it is an amazingly eye-opening event.
Yes.
Sorry, please carry on.
There's a ruined abbey in Glastonbury, in the centre of Glastonbury as well, which is this beautiful enclosed space with a wonderful collection of trees in there as well. You can navigate the abbey via the trees, and there's native trees and some exotic ones as well. So yeah, there's a lot to explore in Glastonbury. People come back here repeatedly. Like once they come back, they don't stop coming back.
Yeah.
Unless they arrive and go, what's all this about?
In which case that we won't go there. Quite what that means, but it's not a good thing. You've also got Arthur and Guinevere, I think, haven't you, tucked away in your abbey? Or is that another? Is that another bit of false news?
I don't know. Their grave, the grave is labelled, so the spot is labelled, and I think there are a few places that claim to be the death place or the burial place of Arthur. So, yeah.
Well, for tonight it can be there. It all adds to the wonderful sense of romance of the place. Let's hear another song. That would be nice.
This is a song called "For the Fire." This is a song I'll dedicate to the beautiful oak tree behind me. So, for the fire. Tale was told as spirit took hold, the night birthed the sun. I began to unfold, and your face was as golden can do, as the darkness upon us stood still around you, and the path was a circle, not a straight line. The way was to pass through the forest to find that end is beginning. From darkness she spoke, The end is beginning, and you are a glimmer of hope. Dancing, a flame entrancing, fuel for the fire, burned for beginning and ends. Dancing, a flame entrancing, fuel for the fire, for the fire. And the tale goes on as two become one. The sway of the silence stood still under sun, and your eyes were to widen as only they do, as the darkness upon us grew dim around you, and the path was unending. We came to believe the way was to pass along the river and see that end is beginning. From darkness she spoke. The end is beginning, and you are a glimmer of hope. Dancing, a flame entrancing, fuel for the fire, burned for beginning and ends. Facing friendly faces, fuel for the fire. You are a flicker of light, glancing, a flame entrancing, fuel for the fire, for the fire.
Absolutely lovely. You wrote that?
Yes, That'll the Fire. I write songs dedicated to nature and talk about the elements and okay, let's do that justice. I write songs inspired by nature, often in nature, and they're slow and meditative songs, and they hopefully allow nature to speak through as well. So you get the birds singing along in the background, and then the wind pipes up as well. So yeah, they're slow and gentle songs and a little bit rough around the edges sometimes.
I wouldn't have thought that at all. I found it really moving, and
they're from heart, you know.
Well, and a great songwriting talent, if I may say so.
Thank you. I would say I'm not sure how much they are mine. They are dedicated to they're produced by the land as well. You know, they emerge.
Well, I think it all fuses together really nicely, as others do. A sincere love of nature expressed in word and song. Trees should never be underestimated to life value. Hug a tree. It's a good thing to do. Which of course was Prince Charles's thing, wasn't it? And he was rather ridiculed for it at the time, but I suspect we've changed our view a bit. I think. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You broke up there a little bit, but
yeah. We have a little bit.
Tree hugging. I enjoy a good hug with trees, especially over the past year when we've not been able to be so close to one another. The trees have been a place of a paradise for me to retreat to, and solitude and solidarity with nature and the trees as well. And they hug back, and they give back in there.
Let's look at a few more before we have to go home.
Okay.
It's this lovely little hollow here. with a kissing gate at each end. And so I'm going to take a slow walk down here and introduce some of the trees along the way. I'm just going to let this person through. And then we've got some lovely old hazel coppices in here as well. Hazel just releasing its leaves there. And some nice old elder. One specific one along here, the elder. You don't often see elder growing in as a tree as a single trunk. It's often in understory and growing more of a shrubby bush. But here there's a perfect tree elder of quite some age. It's got quite some height on it as well. With elder, we've obviously got the lovely corky bark, which is the main identifier. So when I'm identifying trees, I like to ask the tree 3 questions. That's what do your leaves and buds look like? What does your bark look like? And then what do your seeds or flowers look like? So with the elder, we get straight in there and we see the soft corky bark. We can see the pinnate leaves with the blossom forming as well. That will be white blossom, and then they'll turn into elderberries later on. You can see there's little holes and nooks and crannies in this elder as well. Elder is said to be protected by the elder mother. And a wise old woman, and you must ask permission from her before you use the tree for any purpose. So thank you, elder. The name of this lane, Fairy Lane, I think it's a name that's been kind of just caught on generally in the local population. Look at this hazel coppice. So hazel has this tendency to put out these big heavy branches, which once they get too big they snap off. So it's common practice to coppice hazel, and it encourages new growth down low, straight poles for building things, and can also bring the crop of hazels down to a more accessible reach. To some people, I shouldn't be probably mentioning the word fairy at all. So apologies to the fairies for that. For the purposes of this tree walk, I'm going to just say that word a couple of times. It's meant to be bad luck. I'm not terribly superstitious, but I've had some interesting experiences in nature with strange things happening. So I'm slightly careful. This is lovely down here though. We've got the Tor on the right, with new hedgerow planted in here. We've got some honeysuckle and hawthorn here. There are also a few specimens of spindle in here, which is interesting to see, especially in the autumn time when they have their bright orange berry casings and their bright pink berries inside. Or it's the other way around. Pink casings and bright orange berries inside. So more orchard over here. So they have cleared out a lot of this hedgerow this year. You can see a pollarded sort of elder there. They've replaced the fence in here as well. The sheep kept on getting through. Take a look behind us. So the spindle's been planted. It's not growing naturally. Spindle can be a sign of ancient woodland when it's growing naturally. That's some spindle there. It's got racing green on its new growth branches. This has been more recently planted here. So that's a lovely little trip down Fairy Lane. There's the second kissing gate. We'll enter out into
Absolutely delightful. I gather that if we were to walk around Glastonbury, we would find blogs of yours attached in an environmentally kind way to some of these trees.
You would find what, sorry?
You would find your notes to trees.
Right.
I'm perhaps breaking up, am I?
I didn't quite understand what you meant.
Right. You are an author and you write.
Yes.
And I think you write homilies to trees.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I got you. Yep. Okay. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I with the naming trees thing, that's kind of led me to write short stories about them, about the tree themselves and my relationship to them. So there's a series of blogs that's on tothetrees.co.uk. There's a whole bunch of writing and some really nice photos. And I started doing a podcast last year as well, which I might do during the summer again. So there's a few episodes of that to listen to, and I read and recite my poem, my own writing on there as well. So yeah, I think it's a nice idea. I might print off some, go and tie it to the tree.
I think that's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Just before we go, we've got one or two comments still coming in, and my dad, says Lynn, used to hug trees. He would have recommended it to anyone. I've never forgotten the feeling of life through the soles of my feet when I stood inside a hollow oak at Hatfield House years ago. I have to say, I stood in a churchyard in Reims in France and was told to put my hand on a yew tree, which I did, and I felt exactly the same thing. I felt a real sense of power.
Yew is incredible, and there's a yew at Compton Dundon, about 5 miles from here, that's in a churchyard said to be 1700 years old. It's huge, like huge.
1700, how marvelous. Trees talk to each other and help one another. German forester Peter Wolbein, if I've pronounced that right, the hidden life of trees, what they feel, how they communicate, well worth a read. Thank you, Marianne, for that. Well, that brings us, I'm afraid, to the end. I have so enjoyed working on this with you for the last couple of weeks, and the things I've learned have a completely different view now of Glastonbury.
That's lovely.
Which was sort of Tom Jones headlining, was really as far as my understanding went. That's completely changed. And the fusion of creative art with nature is something that's much stronger in me now than it has ever been. And I rather hope and expect it will be with other people too. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us, and thanks coming through in messages from the audience.
I would say thank you very much to you also, Tom. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, working on this, and the aim, if anything, if there is an aim, is to help people connect to nature, in a creative way, opening a doorway, hopefully.
Yeah, and you've done exactly that. So until the next time, everybody, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.
And we will be doing more walks. So I've no doubt that this will be the beginning of what's going to be a really exciting part of the home stage, output. So good night and thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good.
Friendly faces, fuel for the fire. You are a flicker of light, glancing, a flame entrancing, fuel for the fire, for the fire.